Welcome to Speak Your Mind by Climobilize. My guest for this session is Jonathan Frost. Jonathan has a PhD in semiconductor physics and has had a varied career from teacher to IT consultant, and for the last decade, he's become a sustainability advocate who works tirelessly to call out sustainability scams like hydrogen, nuclear fusion, direct air capture, and most biofuels. His request is simple: provide me with scientific evidence. He's still waiting. Jonathan, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Brad. It's an absolute pleasure.
In this session, Jonathan will be speaking about, is 2050 net zero ambitious enough? Jonathan, the floor is yours.
So broadly speaking, in Jurassic Park, they're in the Jeep. There's a dinosaur behind them. Must go faster. That's really the only message I want to get across today. Whatever you're doing, do it now rather than in a week's time or a year's time. So thanks.
Okay, so we're not moving fast enough. So do you think the problem is that we don't understand the problem? Is that where the hiccup is in this whole issue?
Broadly speaking, absolutely not. We're overloaded with information. It's all there. We're given time, I could give 10, 20, 30 plans for very sensible actions. No one's doing anything. It's all in the mind. It's mindset in the leadership, not the technical information. We do not need any more information.
Right. So are you suggesting that it's a behavioral challenge, and that's where the problem lies?
So at the highest level, no politician wants to give bad news. And if we need to cut down on this and that, if we need to cut down on luxuries, no politician wants to advocate a decrease in material living standards. So right at the top, they're thinking 1 year ahead, next election, but we could really do with some longer term mindset at the highest level. At grassroots, you and I, the youngsters, can see that something's going wrong. And they are just scrabbling around, trying to do anything they can to make things better. And they're looking for guidance and leadership, which they're not seeing at our highest levels.
So if people understand that something's not right and they're given a conflicting message in the media, is this to be unexpected that we're not moving in the right direction? I mean, people only know what they hear, what their politicians and what the media and what the guests on the news, which are often just billionaires from Wall Street. So how do we get?
Well, I will answer that with a little story.
Okay.
So when I was little, which was a long half a century ago, and I did my homework, I went down the library and I picked up a book, and I felt I could trust everything I read in the book, or at least the vast majority. A young person today, if they're getting information from YouTube, my estimate is that 95% of it is technically incorrect. So they haven't got a chance. Even if they really want to do something right, they have information, but they don't have curated, accurate information.
So let's lead into the question of, we were talking earlier, what is energy blindness?
So Brad and I are rich, wealthy, and I'm doing all right, thank you. As I look around, everything, approximately everything, is derived or has a connection with oil. So from varnish to plastics to the computers, everything of physical value has a connection to oil. And we've been riding the exponential growth in oil consumption since roughly 1950. So Brad and I, sorry, you're guilty as me. We've been riding the wave of oil consumption, which is energy consumption, which is material consumption. And we've had all the benefits, and now it's payback time. So energy blindness is when you look around you and you fail to see the embedded energy. Everything has a cost, a monetary cost, but there's also an energy cost in everything you look at.
And that energy isn't just in the materials, it's in the labor as well, and the machinery, which is enormous compared to pulling a plow with a ox.
Yeah, one statistic that's often quoted is that it takes 10 calories of oil to make 1 calorie of food. If you take into account the fertilizer, the machinery, the transport, door to door.
Okay. So we have an education problem in many respects, and we have a group of people who are highly knowledgeable, the scientific community. Um, I don't blame them in any way, but if they could do something better, what could they do to help us understand some of these challenges?
So I consider myself a scientist. I've been doing science research for too long. And the biggest mistake that us scientists have made is to just present the information. People are not all scientists like us. So they need a narrative to cling on to. And that's where big oil has won. They've presented a story and a narrative with the backing of massive numbers of dollars in marketing against scientists giving a little bit of information with a budget of $1,000. It's just a numbers game. So what do we need to do? Now we need to get the story right. My particular one is, my underlying motivation is, how can we encourage everyone to be happy with less material stuff? And that gets into mindset, what it means to be a human, telling stories, community. But we just need to consume less stuff.
Which is difficult when you live in a world that's constantly telling you that you're not enough if you don't have more stuff. And people who buy into it like to flaunt that stuff and say, I'm very good, I have a lot of stuff. And the messaging is very hard to fight. It's so constant in our lives. Um, so the leaders of our so-called democracies will tell us that we need to, buy things that are more sustainable, and we can grow our way out of our challenge. And a lot of discussions have been had on this so-called green growth approach. Maybe you can shed some light on what you think of green growth as a solution to our climate challenge.
Yeah, so the short answer is that green growth is a contradiction in terms. If by growth we mean GDP. If growth means something else, like quality of life, then we're okay. So the underlying issue that we have to resolve is how to decouple GDP, the monetary growth, from quality of life. So that if you look at the data, GDP is 0.99 correlation with oil consumption.
Right. It's never been done, essentially. So it's a fantasy.
Correct.
Right.
It's but it is a realistic fantasy, because we know, for example, if we were to halve energy consumption, for the sake of argument, that puts us back to 1990, for the sake of argument. We weren't living in caves in 1990. We may have just had one television instead of three. So some people exaggerate the decline in material standards that we might expect. It's not that bad.
Well, it sounds pretty drastic to go from three televisions back to one. Um, and I think that that comment is indicative of how lost we are in these challenges. Um, let's let's shift and talk about the the idiocy of giving the scientific world through COP, um, allowing it to be controlled by the oil industry, and and what other industries have done anything like that in the past, where they've hijacked the conversation that could have been so productive.
Excellent. So again, my duty is to spin everything positive. So it's now absolutely open, blatant for the whole world to see that the COPs as they stand are a waste of time. So they are just a jamboree for oil companies to sell a bit more stuff to each other. So, but it's they say that sunlight is the best disinfectant. So we've just seen the way it works, and that's good news. Um, and then turning it around, similarities in the past. The classic tactics are deny, delay, distract. So there's an interesting movie called The Merchants of Doubt, and the tobacco industry used all the same tactics. We need another study. It's not certain yet. We have a doctor that say it's fine. So these are identical tactics: big tobacco, big oil.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane to think that you would put the tobacco industry in charge of a health conference, which is effectively what we're doing. And now we're going to go to Azerbaijan, another oil producing country. It's they become so flagrant in their disrespect for reality, um, and we we contribute. How does the scientific community gather if there's not a COP to share their ideas? I mean, do we walk away from it, or do we try and prove it?
I personally, I can't see the point in being connected in any way with COP. You're being tainted by the lobbying party.
Yeah,
One might argue, I'm wondering about this, whether the greatest evil of the 2000s is lobbying.
yeah, yeah. Truth actually is the greatest tragedy. Um, so as we reach the end of our chat, I just wanted to ask you, do you have any final thoughts or messages that you would like to share with the audience?
What does it mean to be a human being? That's what I've been pondering. And I feel it's something to do with telling stories, bringing up the next generation, supporting your community, leave the world in as good a place as you found it. I think that's enough. There might be a couple of other things there, but I don't see in that list buy a big new shiny car. So I advocate being a human being.
Yeah, that's not the message we get from the media industry. I think the message we get is you're successful if you can earn a lot of money and buy a lot of stuff, and and there's a reality that we live in a world where we need to have an income of some kind to pay for our food, clothing, shelter. So a lot of people are stuck in that treadmill and they can't get out. So the politicians need to make it such that we have a choice and we can say no to a system that's causing us so much harm. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. It's great to hear your thoughts and ideas. And I just want to wish you good luck, good health, and as we embark on this new year, let's hope that we can find ways to collaborate and solve some of these challenges.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it, Brad.
Bye bye.